So we are here at FabCon. I'm here with the fellow MVP, Oskari. Would you like to introduce yourself quickly, because some of the channel viewers probably don't know who you are?
Absolutely. So, hello everyone, my name is Oskari Heikkinen. I'm a data platform MVP from Finland, just like Aleksi, and looking forward to this discussion, and we're trying to digest what we've just learned within the past 2 days here at FabCon. So we're going to be focusing on the key highlights, things that we've learned within the past 2 days now, and let's see.
Yeah, there have been really cool announcements, and we are going to talk about some of those announcements, and then we are also going to talk about the maturity of the platform and Fabric overall, and also touch upon some of the AI features that were announced, etc. So let's get started. So we had 2 keynotes actually in this event. So we had the first keynote yesterday, and now it is Wednesday, and we had the second keynote. Both of those keynotes were slightly different. There were like a different angle on those keynotes. In the day one, we didn't hear that much about the AI, which was quite refreshing in my opinion, because nowadays especially in Vegas when I was there, it was mostly about the Copilot, the whole keynote, and now the day one was not really about that. Would you like to say a couple of words about the day one keynote?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm just gonna agree with you on that one. It was such a lovely fresh breath of air to have a keynote of a data platform in the era of AI, where not everything is about the AI. So it was great to hear the new functionalities on the data platform side on top of which the AI functionalities then are built. So I felt like this keynote was something that Microsoft had listened to, the feedback they have received from customers, and when I'm going back to Finland and have the discussions with my customers, it's gonna be a lot to digest and to present in terms of, you mentioned maturity. We've had tons of new announcements on that front. Of course, there were some things related to AI as well, but that wasn't the focus. It was nice to hear that the maturity of the platform has significantly increased within just the past 6 months.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Then we had the second day keynote. Now we had a lot more about the AI. Of course, we had that, like the database stuff as well. Would you like to say something about now, like the day 2 keynote, and what were your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the second day keynote was more about the operational side of things, about having the SQL database available on Fabric. So the SQL as well as the NoSQL, so Cosmos DB, they're now in preview as well. And of course, when you're hosting the operational databases there, and then you're building applications on top of that, the AI capabilities sort of naturally, there's a natural point of discussion to have at that stage. So I felt like this was a really cohesive keynote that we just heard, and those were not just something that were sort of bolted on. Instead, I felt like the AI was baked into these sessions. So it was a great keynote today as well.
So should we talk about next something about like the AI announcements that were just made? So like, what are your thoughts about like the Copilot data agents and MCP server? If we touch upon those before moving to the maturity of the platform, so we have some AI coverage here as well. So
yeah, absolutely. So we had, as a new announcement, the Copilot in PowerBI app. So that was a new thing, good, really fantastic functionality. And then before FabCon, we had already our first MCP server available on Fabric, so on the real-time intelligence side of things. And now we had new announcements regarding that one as well. So we also have the Fabric MCP server, And to me, this just feels like a similar story than we recently had with the Copilot. So what do you think?
Yeah, I really think, and I was like really fascinated about the when they demoed about those AI agents. I see that there could be a lot of potential in those data agents and how those agents are able to utilize the data that you will have in your one lake, and how you can build basically almost like agents on top of the agents, and then most likely you have an underlying agent that will utilize the one lake data, and then you have on top of that agents that will then use that agents to get that data. But yeah, there were like a lot of cool things. How do you see about the MCP server? How would you see, is that a game changer in the near future, or how do you see it? Like,
Well, I see that as a additional thing that enables us to use the data and items that we have on Fabric in the context of these LLM models are better. So we can actually connect directly to the databases, ask relevant questions in natural language, which enables those LLM models then to generate native code in that particular database to answer the question that you had in mind, or similar, for instance, developer activities. So I think it makes all the sense to have those MCP servers in place, and I'm looking forward and hoping that the future will bring even more capabilities in that front.
yes, so maybe that's enough about the AI and Copilot features. So next we can move into the maturity of Microsoft Fabric and talk about some of the announcements and some of the things that have recently been added to Fabric that kind of already elevate the maturity to platform to already very high degree, in my opinion. So it has been improving a lot, like past 6 months, the maturity and what you can do with the platform and the whole CI/CD things. But yeah, let's start for example with the Git and CI/CD support that they just announced. So now the coverage should be 100% of the Fabric items. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly. That was what was announced, but obviously this is now something that we have been able to validate because we just first heard that one, but I'll take Microsoft's word for it. So let's assume it's 100%. Now that is excellent because the previous event around 6 months ago, they had the same figures there. So the Git integration was for 80% of the artifacts, and similar figure for the deployment pipeline. So more or less 80% in that front, which to me sounded like a message. So these are the things that they are gonna focus on in the short term and of course in the long term as well. But I was really positively surprised to see that they have delivered on these so fast. So 6 months later we're from 80% to 100%. So that was fantastic. What were your like top picks on this maturity front? Did you have some functionalities that you especially love to see yourself there?
I really, it was really cool to me to hear that the variable libraries, for example, they are now in GA because I have been waiting for that for a long time because variable libraries makes the CI/CD and deployments way more convenient. Of course, there are things in variable libraries that I don't like that much because everything relies on the internal IDs. So there are chicken and egg problems that we don't have to go in this discussion, but still it is nice to have them in GA. So now I can really say to all of my customers that now we can start to use these variable libraries in production as well. So that's really cool to hear. And also about the CI/CD and Git functionality, I really hope that now when moving forward, it will be supported out of the box for all the features that are in, for example, in preview. So when the feature comes out, it would be instantly Git and CI/CD supported. I don't know if that's hopeful thinking, but it would be nice to have already. And especially like in the past, I think the case was that even though feature would go into GA, it wouldn't be supported by Git and CI/CD, but I think it's no longer the case. I haven't confirmed this, but I assume that now when features go to GA, they are already Git and CI/CD supported then. But
yes.
But
That is my impression as well, that they must be
Yeah.
Git supported before they can reach GA.
Yeah, because in the past they treated them as separate features. So you had the CI/CD and Git support, and then you had the feature itself, and the feature itself went to GA, but the CI/CD and Git support didn't. So it was like a little bit confusing. Okay, this is in GA, but we cannot deploy this, and we cannot use the version control. So, but it's GA, like what's up, but apparently it's getting better on that front as well. But yeah, let's next touch upon about the new security features that have been coming out to Fabric, like that have been announced here, and also that have came out like during past couple of months, because a lot of things are moving and happening so fast with Fabric that maybe it's hard for people to stay up to date what's the new and what's have been happening on the security front. So do you have any like things you would like to highlight? For example, the one leg security. Do you want to say something about that?
We saw a fantastic demo by Casper de Jong in this aspect. So one leg security, and in particular, we also saw row level security, column level security was announced as well, that is now in place. And what we saw in that demo during Keynote was showing how the security works across all of the different engines. So no matter how you try to connect to the data, the same security data security rules are applied. So that was a really fantastic demo. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it was really nice demo, and I really liked it. Of course, I have to be honest that one leg security is a thing that we should have had already a long time ago, in my opinion. So
absolutely,
it has been like,
that's a valid point.
Yeah, I think it has been on the like behind the whole idea behind the Fabric that you have one platform and one security model, but now they are delivering on that promise, which is of course a good thing, but I would have liked to seen it sooner than this. But now it's good that we are finally getting there, and we have this one security that all the different engines will like use, and you don't have to manage those accesses by engine anymore if you don't want to. But yeah, what about the networking side features? Do you have any highlights from the recent past or things that were announced here about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So the things that were mentioned during the keynote was private links, of course, and then of course the outbound access restrictions on the workspace level. So those were yet additional key pieces to that whole landscape of security. So we talked about data security, of course. The network security is another layer in addition to that. So it's just fantastic to see how all of these different pieces are now coming together. So really good progress on that front as well. If we move from the maturity discussion, I think we're agreeing that this is now the key takeaway here.
Yep.
The maturity of the platform is something completely different compared to 6 months ago. But what are your favorite features in terms of the different workloads that we are currently having in Fabric? What were you most excited about?
Yeah, of course, I'm a big data engineering guy, so I don't know PowerBI stuff that well. So of course my highlights are gonna be on the data engineering capabilities. One of the cool things that I really liked that was announced there was that for the shortcut transformations, we are now supporting other file types than CSV only. So I think we have now JSON and Parquet files that are supported. That is really cool to see. Of course, there is another conversation regarding shortcut transformations, that how capacity efficient they are, because I think they are using Spark on the background, and that's
all right. So you have already had some time to play around that functionality. So what you saw there was that it's using the Spark engine?
Yeah, it's using the Spark engine to do the transformation. Okay. And of course, when you spin up the Spark cluster to process, in some cases, just few rows of data, that's overkill. And it's up a lot of capacity every time that runs. And also another thing that is a bit concerning about the shortcut transformation is that when I investigated it, I realized that it's partitioning the data that is coming in per file. For example, if you have in an Azure Blob Storage, you have tons of CSV files that are used for that shortcut transformation, you get a delta table that is partitioned per file. So I don't know how usable maybe those delta tables are if there are like a ton of files and it's super fragmented because of that partitioning strategy. But maybe that's something, I haven't really tested that with a lot of data. Of course, it's always good to have the data in delta table format, but there could be some of those things. But yeah, shortcut transformation was one. What about you? Do you have any highlights from the data engineering stuff?
Well, of course, I love doing data engineering myself. I'm actively always working on that front. So materialized lake views was probably my number one thing there. I think the fact that you have a declarative way of describing that transformation, and then on the other hand, what you get out of the box is that data lineage end to end. That's just fantastic functionality to have in place. That helps you so much when it comes to troubleshooting, understanding what may have been the issues if you encounter any issues in your batch loads. So currently it is only supporting this batch type of data processing operations. So keep that in mind if you start playing around with that one.
I haven't actually played around materialized lakes views at all. I have to admit that that's something that I should do. Have you looked into like the capacity efficiency of the materialized lakes views? Like, do they eat a lot of capacity when it's being processed, or have you looked at that side at all?
Well, since you mentioned that the shortcut transformations use Spark, of course the materialized lake views, they use Spark as they're supposed to. So of course from that perspective, as we're talking about, or the context here is that we're processing data with Spark. So by default we're using a distributed computing framework here. So we should be by default processing massive quantities of data to use these kind of distributed frameworks. Otherwise, like, why would you distribute the compute if you only need a single node to process the data? So of course that is the key scenario that it unlocks. Whenever you have massive quantities of data and you're building your lake house, then absolutely sounds like a fantastic functionality there.
A little side point there, now Python notebooks are in GA. So if you don't need Spark, you need lightweight transformation like code-based, then Python notebooks. What about user-defined function? Are they already in GA or are they still in preview? I don't remember.
The user data functions.
User data functions,
Yeah, I have not seen, at least as of yet. The event is still ongoing, so we still may have some additional announcements later today or tomorrow. So of course we don't know absolutely everything, but I think right now we are still in the preview phase.
I would assume
user data functions, because it was just announced a few months ago.
Yeah, but I think they're a really cool addition to Fabric when you need to do some very lightweight compute actions, for example, in your data pipeline, and you don't need to spin up a Spark cluster to calculate some tiny things there. User data functions, they have like a ton of use cases in my opinion, and they are in my opinion so much better than Azure functions, because I really hate Azure functions. I don't really want to develop Azure functions. I try to stay away from Azure functions whenever I can, but in Fabric the user data functions, they are much more easier to use.
Yeah, definitely agree on that one.
What about like when now we have been touching Spark a bit, so Fabric Runtime 2.0 was announced. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, really looking forward to that one. So the Runtime 2.0 was announced that it should be coming later this year, and with that one what we get is Spark 4.0 and Delta Lake 4.0 and all of the good things that come along with those major version upgrades. So really looking forward to that one.
Yes, okay. Then there were some announcements also about the Dataflow Gen 2. I know that you are not probably haven't been using Dataflow Gen 2 that much. I haven't been either, so I have to admit that because I think that notebooks are the way to go. But there were some announcements about that they are now have made it more efficient and way much faster. That could open up some use cases maybe for Dataflow Gen 2. Of course, my personal issue with Dataflow Gen 2 has been always the thing that it's a kind of a vendor lock when you start to use it, because then you have this visual tool and it's very Microsoft specific. So of course I love Fabric, but if there would be a case that somebody would want to migrate out from Fabric, migrating data flows out would be a real pain compared to notebooks. When you have, for example, Spark code, it would be so much easier project than start to migrate like data flows. Of course, in data flows, maybe the data lineage could work better, I would assume, than in notebooks, or it's much easier to have there working in the near future at least. But do you have any thoughts about Dataflow Gen 2 announcements or?
Nothing whatsoever. As you mentioned, I actually haven't had a use case where I would have been using it. So up to this point, I'm mostly been using Data Factory or notebooks just like you for the same use cases. So no actual real world knowledge about Dataflow Gen 2.
Yeah. Then I have one topic for you. You are doing the Ask the Experts booth today.
Yes.
And what is your topic there?
It's going to be data warehouse.
So let's talk about data warehouse. No, you should be the expert on data warehouse. So there were some of the announcements made about data warehouse. For example, we can start with the performance improvements. So do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. So what the team has done there, I think they mentioned that a total of 40 different individual improvements, which on average lead up to a 36% performance improvement, which is fantastic. Whenever we get some performance improvements that are implemented on the software layer, what it means to us as customers is that not only does our job or executions or statements run faster, but since they run faster, it's also cheaper to run. So this was, from customers' perspective, fantastic set of new improvements on the performance front. And then, of course, the other pain that the customers may feel when moving towards the data warehouse in Fabric is the migration.
Yes.
You're most likely not doing greenfield in 2025. You already have a data warehouse somewhere which needs to be migrated to the warehouse in Fabric. And I was really happy to find out that now the migration assistant is in GA for this specific purpose.
Yeah, I have some customers who have, like, for example, Azure data warehouse. So maybe we could consider moving it to Fabric data warehouse at some point. So it's really good to see that migration assistant is now in GA, like you just said. But yeah, let's move on to the real-time stuff. So there were some announcements about the real-time intelligence in Fabric. So do you have any highlights from that discussion or those announcements that were made?
Yeah, absolutely. So two of my favorites, the anomaly detection that is specific to customer data.
Yeah.
That sounded very that sounded fantastic functionality. I need to try it out definitely. And the other one was the schemas now available on the event streams. So what we have had on Azure, we have had the schema registries on Azure Event Hubs, which brings us the similar kinds of capabilities. However, what that schema definition on Azure Event Hub does is that it sort of provides you as a producer and a consumer a common schema. So as a producer, you're supposed to send the data in this specific format, but you actually, like, technically don't have to. You can still send whatever to the Event Hub.
Yeah.
But right now, what the real-time intelligence and the schemas there enable you to do is to actually enforce the schema, which is fantastic. So you can just drop the records that do not that are not according to the schema definition.
Okay, so now when you have incoming data, you can enforce it the schema so that it will be in the set schema when it comes in, and if it doesn't match that, it can be dropped immediately, so you don't need to process it forward, so you can enforce it. And I think that's pretty cool and very handy in many situations.
Fantastic news from data engineering perspective.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting in advance, so you know then how you process, and you can trust the data on a completely different level when you can enforce the incoming schema.
Yeah. What about the Power BI side of things? So if we move into that, do you have any highlights from the recent announcements that were just made about the Power BI, and what cool you saw there?
Yeah, absolutely do. And my number one favorite announcement was that the web modeling in Power BI is now in GA. And what that means is that, for instance, I've been developing Power BI reports for 10 years now, but I run and work on Windows platform. So thus I've been always have the capability of doing that. But some of my friends like to use Mac.
Yeah.
And up to this point, they really couldn't have downloaded Power BI desktop and developed their own reports. And what they can do today is just log into Power BI service and do the modeling there in the web. So right now, you can actually develop those semantic models for Power BI on Mac as well. So that is great news.
That's very great news. So that the Mac users are no longer handicapped in that regard. So they can use the web modeling to do all the stuff there. So that's really nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so and also there was this cool announcement related to Fabric UI. So now we are going to have these tabs on the top bar. I haven't personally tried those yet, but they looked so cool on the demos, and I think that will make like my Fabric developer experience probably a lot better. As a disclaimer, like I said, I haven't tried those yet, but they seem to be very cool. What are your thoughts about them?
Yeah, looked really promising. Like you said, looking forward to working with that one. And my initial thoughts around that is that this is a step to the right direction. Yeah. This is exactly what I wanted to have there in the first place. So.
Yeah, so now it's going to be like a Fabric is like a browser within a browser when you have like
two layers. Tabs open at the same time.
Yeah, then you can have like tabs in multiple layers. But let's see how it goes. Let's see if it goes. I think it's better than the old that you have those things on the side. And let's see. But I have to try that. But yeah, I think we could wrap it up here. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and Oskari, and I would like you to know in the comment section, would you like to see more content like this, and would you like to see more Oskari on the channel? I think we can arrange that, but please be kind. If you didn't like Oskari, just don't mention it maybe. But if you want to see him more, just let us know in the comment section down below. Yes, but we will wrap it up here. Now, thanks for watching.